Amen.
All right, I'm on Spotlight Lori's video here. Um, Lori, the floor is yours. The evening is yours. Go for it. Lori Olivier, everyone.
Hi, guys. Hi, I'm Lori, and welcome to my TED Talk. Uh, I, um, I was trying to figure out like kind of where I wanted to go with this evening, and this particular part of my life that I'm talking about, I haven't really publicly shared it. Like, the journey that I've been on for the last 2 years. So I wasn't really sure how to start it. And there isn't really an ending to it. But the beauty of God is that our stories are they don't come to like in this life. They don't literally we just sometimes don't see the end of it. So like, I wanted to try to figure out where I wanted to start. So as far back as I wanted to go. So this is like the story of the last 2 years, but I'm going to start actually a year before that. So we're going to work our way into it. 3 years ago, I was working in Princeburg. I was working at Central Minnesota Christian School. And I had lived there for like 9 or 10 years. So I was part of that community for a really long time. And then I decided that I wanted to get my master's degree. So I applied to Bemidji State. And not only did I get accepted to do my master's, I also got accepted to be a graduate assistant. So I was able to teach at Bemidji State freshman composition. For a lot of people, that may sound boring and awful, but for me, I really enjoyed it. So like I'm an English nerd by trade. I love stuff like that. And then during this whole time, for like at least 8 or 9 months during that, there was just stuff going wrong. Like physically, I wasn't feeling well. I'm not going to go into too many graphic, gory details because it's not necessary, but stuff was starting to happen and I couldn't figure out why. And I was stressed out about it, but I didn't say anything because I thought it really was just stress. I really thought that it was just like my body's reaction to it. I thought that if once I got into my grad program, yeah, like that's going to go away. When you're in a master's program, it's like the most stressful thing on the planet. But I really thought that once my life kind of settled down a little bit, that maybe it would just alleviate some of the things that were happening to me. So I moved out of Princeburg in May of 2018, and I moved all my stuff up to Bemidji. I went to camp for the summer, and those things were still happening. And I was like, this is not that stressful of an environment. So like, I don't understand what's going on. But it was getting worse and I couldn't figure out why. And it was like, okay, so something's got to give. I get into my master's program. I get about 2 months in and I'm like, okay, we've got to go to the doctor. Like something's wrong. And so I was going to be back in Princeburg for a weekend. So I decided to come a day early and I made an appointment on a Thursday. And over the series of 2 days, they ran 3-4 tests, which I wasn't expecting. I just thought I was going in for a routine, like, okay, this is what's going on. Just tell me what it is, and we'll move on with our life. Like, I really thought it was just going to be this really easy transition from like, okay, we can just take care of this with some drugs or some pills or whatever, and it'll be fine. That's really not what happened. So I went through this series of tests. I got like an ultrasound and a biopsy. And then I was like, the doctor thought, well, it's probably nothing more than like endometriosis. It's probably fine. I wouldn't worry too much about it. So I'm like, okay, like he's not concerned. I'm not concerned. So I went back to Bemidji, and on the 31st of October of 2018, so Halloween, I'm at work. And I'm just getting done with my graduate assistant advisory meeting. And I see that I have a missed phone call, which I had tried to call them. And then they called me back. I got the voicemail. And then I'm like, oh, I better go take this. So I go into my office and I call back the doctor. And I'm like, hey, this is blah, blah, blah. You know, you called me. What can I, how did the test go? And the first thing he asks me is like, are you by yourself? And I'm like, yep. Like I'm in my office, the door's closed, like I'm here by myself. And he goes, okay, I'd rather you not be for what I'm about to tell you, but if that's where you are, then he's like, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. He's like, we found cancer. And I was like, all I heard in that sentence, I remember the whole conversation, but what stood out was, I'm sorry, and cancer, because you never think that that's going to be you, like ever. Like you never think that that's going to be your life. And the very first thought I had was, now what? Like, I'm into this grad program and I'm only 2 months in, and now what? And then my second thought was, I have to teach class today and I have class tonight. So like, do I just not go? Like some dumb, ridiculous, stupid thing like that. And so I sat there in my office, just literally by myself, trying to figure out how to process what I had just been told. And I don't think I left there for like 30 minutes. I think I sat in that chair for like 30, 35 minutes, just trying to figure out like what I had just heard. At that point, I think I texted a few people, and then I hadn't called my family yet. So I'm sitting in my office just praying. I was like, God, I do not understand. I do not get what just happened. I don't know what's going on. But okay, like, I'm not angry yet. Like, it was almost like I'm too shocked and stunned to even really understand, I think, what I was really feeling. And so I leave the school. I actually went to class. I went to all of my classes. And then I get a phone call from Minnesota Oncology that day. So then all of a sudden, like 3 hours later, it's only been 3 hours. I already have an oncology appointment. I already have an MRI appointment. Like, I'm like, this was not what happened 3 hours ago. Like, my life was not this 3 hours ago. But then all of a sudden there's like doctors, a lot of them. And I was like, it moved so fast. Like, it just moved so quick. And I get to my car and I'm sitting in the parking lot, and I called my brother and sister-in-law. I moved from my car from the parking lot to the Holiday parking lot, the gas station. I call my dad. I didn't even get home. Like, I was like, I just want to do this in my car because I don't really want to do this at the house. So then I think I was down the street or something, and my brother from South Korea called me, and we talked on Facebook Messenger over the like audio version, and he wanted to know what was going on because I told him to call me as soon as he could. So my family all knew that night, with some random friends thrown it, like some people that I had trusted that I knew I could text right away and let them know. And I got home and I literally just sat in my apartment, and I did not know what to do with myself. I didn't know how to process that, because that's not something you hear every day. And it's not something you expect to hear, because that's not what you kind of were led to believe it would be. So it was like, okay, God, what do we do with this? Because I don't know what to do with this. And the days kind of just started to go, and I don't remember much of what happened past that, as far as like the rest of the week, like the rest of the month. I just knew I had this oncology appointment on the 9th of November that I needed to make. So I went. And I had an MRI before that. So now all these other things that I'd never experienced before, now we're doing. So like, now I'm a MRI person, and now I'm going to an oncologist, and now I'm doing these ultrasounds and like these biopsies. Like, it's just the strangest feeling to go from like life seemed normal to life is not normal anymore. And it's just really kind of a mess. I get to November 9th. I meet my oncologist and she tells me that we can't do surgery because I'm too heavy. So I have to lose like a bunch of weight. I have to lose like 100 pounds, which I have. So like, that was something that had to happen. So like, on top of that, there's another thing that has to happen now in order to get to surgery to remove this cancer from my body. And I'm like, what other obstacles, Lord? Like, what else can we put in the way in order to get this to be done? And I was like, okay, well, if you're going to do this, take it seriously, gung ho, just go for it. So I like took it super serious. But what I didn't realize was, not only is like that kind of weight loss, like it's 25% like physical and like physical exercise and like eating right, but it's like 75% mental. So like, I'm going through all of these other emotions as I'm dealing with this other thing that's going on. So there was a lot that happened in the course of like 6 months. And during that time, I questioned constantly. I questioned God. I'm not even going to like sugarcoat that. I questioned him and I doubted. And I was like angry. So I'm like, why? Like, has this not been enough? We just add that to it too. Like, have we not gone through enough? So then I had to do a surgery on December 13th of that year. It basically like helped to alleviate the symptoms of what I was going through so that I could live a normal life, because at that point I wasn't even able to leave my house. I couldn't go very far for very long. I was fatigued, I was tired, I was in pain. And there was a lot of other things that were going on. So like what that surgery was meant to do was to alleviate those symptoms before I could actually have the actual surgery to get rid of what was going on in my body. So I'm like, okay, well, December 13th comes and we have the surgery and I feel pretty good for a while. And then my next oncology appointment wasn't until April 11th. And I couldn't figure out why it was so far away. And every time I would try to call, I wouldn't get any answers. I would try to get a hold of my oncologist. I couldn't get a hold of her. So I was just getting the nurse practitioner, and I wasn't getting any like real answers to why we hadn't progressed or moved forward. In my own impatience and not in God's will, not in God's like leading and guiding, I literally was going at this like, okay, well, I can figure this out. Like, I got this, when I really didn't have it at all. I didn't have any like idea of what I was really in for and how much I was going to need to rely on God and how much I was really going to need to lean into him, because it was difficult and it was lonely. Like there was a lot of times where I would go days without talking to people and I would just wallow in that. That was mostly self-inflicted. I could have reached out and chose not to. I had all the excuses. Like, I don't want to put anyone else through this. So why would I? I can deal with it myself. And that was probably the most destructive line of thought I could have possibly had, because I needed community and I needed the people around me. But it was really hard to have that when I'm in Bemidji and I'm 5.5 hours away from my family. I'm 4 hours away from my closest friends and 2 hours away from my other family. Like I was literally on my own. I was isolated. And it was hard to do this. Like I leaned into God as much as I could. But I was like, God, I need people. Like, I need people to come around me. I need a hug today. Like, I just need something. And I always knew when that prayer was answered, because then all of a sudden there'll be a text message or a phone call. And it was like, you just know, like, you got this, you got me. So then April 11th comes, and this is like the 4 months after my surgery. And I'm expecting that we're going to have this conversation. We're going to talk about having surgery. We're going to actually get to that. And we're going to be like, we're going to set a date. We're going to get this out. I'm going to move on with my life. So Anne was actually with me at that appointment. And I went in expecting to be able to have answers. And it was a half an hour appointment with the nurse practitioner. And we literally didn't talk about anything. And I walked out really frustrated, because I'm like, do they not care? Like, it became more, do they not care what's going on with me? Like, don't they care at all? But actually, like, I knew that, like, looking back on it now, God had a different plan for this. So I was like, okay, well, looking back on it now, but in the moment, I was really angry and I was really upset. So I got a second opinion. I went to the U of M's. That's where my weight management team was. And I asked if I could self-refer to their oncology department, and I got in. And I got a new oncologist, and I just asked questions. I was like, is this normal? Is this what we do? Like, I've never gone through this before, so I have no idea like what to expect. So she answers all of my questions and she set me at ease. And then she's like, let's redo the biopsy. Let's redo the MRI. I want to see where everything is sitting. And I'm like, okay, we can do that. So I felt better coming out of that appointment thinking, okay, we're going to have answers now. Like, it's going to be okay. And I was like, holy cow, like we might actually have forward motion now. So after May 31st, which was the appointment in the cities, I go to camp, like not very long after that. And then I get a phone call from Dr. Erickson, who is my oncologist now. And she tells me, yeah, I think we can move forward with surgery. Like I don't think this is going to get better. I think that the risks outweigh the benefits at this point. So I think we need to move forward. And I'm like, yes, yes. And she's like, so when can we schedule it for August? I'm like, yes, we can. So we scheduled it for August 5th. And I was at camp during this. And so a lot of the people, like the people that are in here, Ryan, Leah, and T, they got to hear my frustration, and they got to listen to all of the fears that I had and how scared I was for the surgery. And I was going to be under for 3.5 hours, and I didn't know how that was going to go. And I was just so apprehensive about how this was all going to happen. But at the same time, there was some peace there, because I'm like, okay, we're going to be okay. Like the answer's coming, like we're going to get through it. It's going to be fine. So I get to August 5th and actually like the week before I had a pre-op appointment. And then I didn't realize that I didn't understand, I guess, what the whole, everything that was going to go into this surgery. Cause I just thought we're going to remove the cancer. That's it. And Dr. Erickson comes into the exam room and she sits down in front of me and she puts a piece of paper down in front of me and she goes, I'm going to explain this to you and I need you to understand it. And then I need you to sign it because otherwise we can't do surgery. And so I'm like, what is this? And it's essentially said, by consenting to this surgery, you are under the understanding that after the surgery, you'll be sterile. And I was like, wait, like I didn't even put 2 and 2 together that was going to be a thing. And I'm like, I would love to have kids someday. And now this is being taken away. I can't. And I had to sit there, like she left the room and I sat there for 10 minutes and I looked at that piece of paper with the pen in my hand. And I was like, I don't know if I can sign this. But I'm like, what are the alternatives? Because the other alternative was to do chemo and radiation and potentially have to have surgery anyway. So what's the better option here? But I'm like, I did not see that coming and it blindsided me and it almost knocked the wind out of me. And I'm literally sitting in the exam room and I'm like, tears are just, they're coming and I can't stop them. And Dr. Erickson comes in, she goes, yeah, I understand. Like, I understand how hard this is going to be. And she goes, did you sign it? I said, yeah. And I gave it to her. And then I had words with God on the way home. And I was mad. I was angry and I was upset. And I was like, I don't understand, like one thing after another, like the other shoe felt like it dropped. And then all of a sudden I was just like spinning out of control. And I'm like, what is your plan and purpose for this? Like, where are we going with this? Like, I don't understand. I don't get why it just keeps getting worse. Like, I didn't have a choice in this. Like, yes, I had a choice, but like it would have inevitably ended up the same. And I kept on just like praying that he would give me an answer. I was like, is there an answer? Is there like, there's like something, right? And there wasn't anything. And I'm like, okay, well, surgery's in a week. So I'm just going to be like, this is what it's going to be. So I don't think I ever really made reconciliation with that whole thought. And I think I'm still kind of dealing with that now, but I'm like, okay, we'll just face forward, keep going. Like, you're going to get this out in like a week. So we're going to keep going. So then August 5th came and I went under and they removed, like it was a partial hysterectomy. So they took a whole bunch of stuff out. And then they took out lymph nodes to make sure that, and they tested them to make sure that there was no spread. And then a couple of days later, I got the call from Dr. Erickson that everything came back negative. So praise God, like it was good. I didn't have any cancer anymore. I was good to go. Once the surgery was over and I was home and I was by myself and I started to thinking, like, this is why why I think it's so important that taking every thought captive is so important, because it's super easy to like spiral into a negative place. And I did, for a really long time. It was really dark. And I felt really alone and I felt really by myself. And I'm like, who's going to possibly understand everything I just went through? I don't know how to even put words to this. So I got back to Wilmer a couple of weeks after surgery, probably like a month, and we started school. And I would go home, I would go to school, and I would be back at home and I would literally just cry for hours because I was so lonely and I was so hurt and I could not understand how anybody could understand what I was going through. And I didn't give anybody the benefit of the doubt to even try because I self-isolated. And that was on me. Like I did that. But I was like, like God and I were having a lot of conversations and I was praying like crazy and I just felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. I felt like I didn't understand why I had just gone through the last year and a half. I didn't understand why things that I thought I would be able to have were taken away. I didn't get it. And it really tested faith. It really tested what I believed. It really tested my trust in a trustworthy God who had me in his hands the whole time and who was walking me through this valley the entire time. And I didn't even see it because I was so self-focused on what was going on with me that I didn't see what God was doing around me. And slowly I started to kind of let people in to what was really going on. Like I would have random conversations here and there with people, but I was like, I really need a friend. Like I really need friends. I need people, like I need community because this isn't working on my own. So I started to reach out a little bit more and I started to kind of put feelers out to see who was still there because I feel like I kind of isolated people away from me. So I found a community. I started to find community and God provided community. He provided people to come around me. He provided those relationships. And I was so grateful for that because if I didn't want to be by myself in Wilmer. Like I didn't even honestly know why I was back in Wilmer. So that was like really hard for me to like understand too, is like, why am I back in a town I've left like 3 times? So like, why did I come back here? But there's a very real plan and purpose for what he is doing in my life. There's a real plan and purpose for where he has me right now. Like in this season of life, God is faithful. He has not changed. He has not altered himself. He's always been, he always will be, and he always was. Like he always has been. Like he's always been consistent. The person that changed was me. Like I was the one that walked away. I was the one that let those thoughts get into my head. I was the one that let myself be isolated from everything and everyone that I loved because I didn't think anybody would want to deal with it. I didn't think anybody would want to be in it with me because it would be too hard. And I was trying to save them from it, but actually like it was destroying me in the end. So he's like, I think like he led me to a place of just being more vulnerable, more open, and like tearing down some of those walls. Because I think sometimes as a Christian, we want to pretend that everything is okay. We want to pretend that like we've got it all together. Guys, I don't have it all together. And I'm not even going to sugarcoat that. Like I don't have it all together. Still to this day, don't have it all together. But at the same time, I have this beautiful God who walks me through that. And he understands and he gets it. And then he puts imperfect people around me so we can all grow together and understand and get it. Like, and we get to get in the word together and we get to pray for each other. Guys, prayer is powerful, like powerful. We get to do life together. And when isolating doesn't help, like it actually makes it a whole lot worse. And I found some really dark places when I isolated, like dark places. And now, like, I'm not through it all yet. Cancer is always going to be this part of my life that every year when it comes up to the day of you have to go get tested again, it hangs over my head for like a week. So in February, what 6-month checkup was, I was cancer free. In August, I had my year cancer free. Praise God. I don't have to go back for another year. So like in August of this upcoming year will be my next appointment. But every time it gets a little closer or we get to the month of, or like whatever, there's always this like nagging in the back of my head. Well, what if they find something? What if this time? What if? Like it's always just there. But I'm like, there is not a place I can go that God has not already gone. There's not a place that I can go where he will not go with me. So it doesn't matter if it comes or not. Like he already is there with me. He already is walking with me through it. So why do I fear? And why is there anxiety? And why do I get scared? Because honestly, like God, he's got me. And I've got a community of people who have got me too. So I'm just so grateful for this journey, even though I don't understand it. And I probably will never understand why. And I don't need to. I may never know the answer to any of this, and that's okay. I have had to come to reconcile that too. I may never know why I went through this, and it's okay. Like, it's okay to not know. One day, maybe he'll reveal that to me. But for right now, he has me in a really good place, and I love where I'm at. Like, I love what I get to do for like the ministry that I get to do. I love the kids I get to work with. Like, I really do love where I am. I would not have gotten here if it weren't for that. And I love the closeness that I feel with God now. Like, it's almost like there's restoration in a relationship, like reconciliation in a relationship, because I did walk away for a while. I felt like I walked away, and I felt like I pushed him away during this whole thing, because how could he possibly understand it? My gosh, of course he understood it. He understood all of it. I just didn't give him the benefit. So it's not finished. The story isn't done. Praise God. Because what cool things is he going to do past this? Like, I can't wait to see what he's going to do with not only my life, but the lives of my friends, the lives you guys have. Like, what an amazing story we have, and what an amazing God we serve. And how beautiful is that tapestry of all the things that we've gone through, and like get to use in the ministry that he has put us in, like the experiences that we have. Like, it's really cool how he puts people together. And I'm just so grateful for this time in my life, and to be able to have his peace in my heart, and his joy, and his love, knowing that he never left me alone for 1 second. I always had him there, always. I think that's it. I think I'm done. Oh.
Awesome job, Lori. Lori, are you okay taking a few questions?
I mean, yeah, why not?
All right.
Hi, Kaylee. Kaylee's here, by the way, with me. She's like over there being a bum. So yeah. That's how.
When you found yourself in that season of isolation,
Mm-hmm.
what were ways that you, like, any specific ways you found your way out of it? Like, can you share anything?
Yeah, there was for a while I didn't find my way out of it. Like, to be really honest. I got really good at wallowing in my own sorrow. I think we're really good at throwing our own pity parties. Like, I was went pro probably during that time. And the way that I kind of like shook myself out of that a lot, sounds really weird, but I would get in my car, and I have a playlist of, like, somebody actually sent me the playlist, and it's of these just really awesome worship songs. And I would literally just drive around and listen to this. I would waste so much gas in Wilmer. Like, I just literally lapped the town, and I had to get out of my own headspace, because if I didn't do that, it was going to drive me nuts. And I'm like, okay, there's like, Jesus just invade my mind. Like, I need to release these thoughts to you. I need to get rid of them, because if I can't, like, I'm going to drown in them. I'm going to drown hardcore. And like, a verse that I held on to, and I kind of is my life verse. Like, I think we have different seasons of life verses, but for this one, this is what it is. It's Hebrews 6:19. And it's, we have this hope as an anchor for our soul, firm and secure. And I love that, just because, like, during those storms and during that isolation, during that time where I felt really alone, and that storm was raging, like, I had an anchor. Like, I had something that was grounding me, even when I didn't realize that I had Jesus grounding me. I didn't realize it, but he was that hope that I could hold on to. He was that anchor in the storm when my boat was like capsizing, but I could still hold on. And that faith pulled me through a lot. And the fact that if I reached out to, there were certain people I could reach out to, and I was like, could you just pray for me right now? Like, legit, like right now. And they're like, oh yeah. And then they'd get on the phone with me. They wouldn't even take the text message. They'd just like call, and they'd be like, yeah, let's pray right now. Like, let's just go. I'm like, thank goodness. Like, being able to reach out to the body of Christ is incredible. Like, to be able to know that I had those people that I could rely on to just pray. And I was like, I don't even know how to word what I'm trying to say, but they would always know the words. They would always know how to pray. And it's like, that's because they're in touch with the Spirit. Like they know, God knows, like he knows how they need to pray for me. And I'm like, that's just incredible. Like to me, the body of Christ is just an amazing thing. So there was a couple different ways I would get there, but it took a long time, like to get out of that negative self-talk and that negative mindset. So yeah.
Anyone else have any
Can you
questions?
send me that playlist?
Absolutely. Yep. I can actually.
Thank
you have
you.
Spotify?
I would like to send that to my mother.
Yep.
What?
You have Spotify? Because
Yeah, Spotify would be great.
absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thanks, Lori.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Not to dwell on a negative thing, but maybe this could be helpful if you're in a season, or else if you're trying to help someone through a season. Was there anything that like you're like, hey, if you're trying to help someone, don't do this, don't say this?
I got that a lot. Yes. Like sometimes just being there and sitting silently while somebody talks is enough. Because I don't know how many times I heard, and I'm not trying to like belittle it or knock it down, but I don't know how many times I heard, well, just pray about it. God will get you through it. And I'm like, yes, I do know that. But like, I would really like it if you like, even just like somebody that can just like sit and listen and let you just cry through it and let you just talk through it. Because honestly, like sometimes that's the best thing for you, is just to be able to like talk through something without commentary. I mean, like sometimes that's just better. Like it's better to just be able to sit and be available for somebody, offer them a hug when they need it. Like just sit and listen, because sometimes for those that are suffering, that's all they need, is just somebody to be able to talk to. So that for me was huge, when I would be able to have friends that would do that for me, and with me, and then they would pray. Like they would pray, like that was huge too, like being able to just pray through the situation and give it to God, because who better to work through that situation than the God of the universe? He already knows, like he already knows how he's working through it. And it's like that brought comfort, that I didn't have to have it figured out, and I don't have to have it figured out. I don't have to have a plan at all. He has the plan, and he has the purpose, and he has the will. Praise God for that, because on my own, I'm a mess. Like I will screw it up every time. So I'm glad that I have God in my life to be able to like maneuver me through those obstacles and through those hard times. But yeah, just being available helps. Just being available sometimes, and maybe just not even saying anything, just letting that person talk is really therapeutic. Just knowing that you have another person in the world to be able to, that will listen.
I promise we're not going to keep banging this drum too much,
Nope,
but Marcus and Maddie asked, did the statement, "I know what you're going through," ever anger you in any way?
Depending on who it was and if they actually really knew, like, yes and no. It's a sweet sentiment, but like, I would always be like, do you really though? Like, do you really? Like, does this really make sense to you? Like how I'm doing, like how this is going? Sometimes that really made me mad. Like I always wanted to question it, but then I never did, because I'm like, that's rude. Like, don't question somebody's nice sentiment. Like, don't be a jerk. It's fine. Like, just go. But yeah, sometimes it did. Mm-hmm.
You talked about God having a plan and a purpose for your life.
Yeah.
What avenues has he provided for you to kind of execute that plan and purpose?
Oh, okay. I love this question. Well, first off, he put me at McRae, and I work with some of the greatest kids. Like, and I know that he uses, because there's so much more to my story that I didn't share just because of time, and I really wanted to kind of cover this, but like my backstory with like how rough my past was, like how rough my family was, like I can understand these kids. Like I understand where they come from. So it's like I really believe that that was God ordained. I really think that he put me there for a plan and a purpose. And sometimes they'll even ask me about my faith. Like I can't prompt it, but sometimes they will ask. And I'm like, okay, if you ask me, then I can say what I can tell you, but I can't prompt it. So it's like, if they ask me though, like, Miss O, do you go to like church on Wednesday nights? And what church do you go to? And then I can tell them like, this is the church I go to, but like, what do you believe about this? Open door. Like, okay, let's go. But some of them come from really hard homes, like dysfunctional families, really rough backgrounds. And I'm like, those are the kids that I seem to find myself gravitating towards, because I never want a child to ever feel like they're not loved. And I always want them to know that they have like an adult that's on their side and backing them in their corner, because every kid deserves that. So that's one. The fact that I got back involved with this is pretty awesome. I didn't see this coming. So like when I came back to Wilmer, I was like, yeah, I know Joppa's still going, but like I didn't see myself getting back involved with it. But now I love it. Like I love being part of the ministry again. I like the people that I've met in the ministry. I've become good friends with several of them. So it's like, this is cool. Like I think I'm in a better place in my life than I was even 10 years ago when I did this. So it's like, I love that God has opened that door again, that it was not shut permanently. And then also, like, I love serving at my church. I love being at my church. Like, there's a lot that goes on here that's really dynamic. And to be able to be a part of that has been a blessing, a huge blessing. And knowing that I have a church family that's behind me, like, invaluable. Like, I love it. So I think God has placed me in these different places, not only just for community's sake, but for the fact that, like, I get to serve, like the honor of serving in these different places, because it's just really amazing just to see how God moves in that. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's just these questions that I have just to kind of fill some of the gaps, because I know some of your backstory, and but I also wanted to point out like some of the specifics of how God brought you through some of this stuff. So you worked a number of different jobs over these years, and all of them have been relatively youth oriented, service oriented. What's been like the most beneficial element where you've got to see God work through your work with youth?
Oh, that for sure is camp, for sure. Every summer that I was there, I did that for 9 summers, and seeing, and I think Tiara and Ryan and Leo would agree with a lot of that, like seeing these kids come back year after year, and knowing that, I mean, even if we didn't have a hand in it, like God was working through us, and just to see like how they grew over those years, and then to see them come back and work on staff, and then to make a difference in the lives of other kids. Like there's this beautiful, like, discipling someone so they can disciple, so that they can disciple, like mentorship, like, is so vital, I think. And like, I think it's really important that to see like these kids that came from such hard places, like just latch on and trust adults. Like they really like opened up when they were at camp. And I think for me, that was huge. Like to see some kid that came in with like walls up, guarded. By the end of Friday, they were like the most excited and the most like outgoing and social kid you've ever seen. But then being completely heartbroken, knowing where they're going back to, and knowing there's nothing you can do to stop it. That was also like something we had to deal with a lot, was we didn't know where these kids were, like some of these kids, we didn't know where they were going back to. So like I grew a lot in those summers, just like in those interactions, because they taught me more than I could have ever taught them about resilience, about perseverance. Like their lives were just this beautiful story that I could not even wrap my head around sometimes. But it was like, whoa, like we get the honor of working with them and being part of their faith and their journey. Like, whoa, like, and then they're going to take that out and take it back home with them. And hopefully, like, we planted a seed that they can take and then plant some seed somewhere else as they develop their faith and as they grow closer to Jesus and as they, continue to get into the word. Like, it was really cool to see that.
I know you want to help, but I've got it. Dad, I've got it.
I think that one bled through on a
I think
mute.
so. Yeah.
One more question I just got in the private chat here. Where's the Salvation Army camp located?
It's up in Finlayson, Minnesota. So it's about 3.5 from me. I think from T and Ryan and Leah, it's 2. It's up about 40 miles south of Duluth. So it's kind of in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Hardly any cell service. And like, we have Wi-Fi. So it's really, it's a beautiful place. You've been there, Jeff.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful camp. And we get kids from the cities and we get kids from North Dakota. So it's like the Northern Division is Minnesota and North Dakota. So we get a lot of kids from the cities. We get a lot of kids from greater Minnesota, and we also get some kids from North Dakota. So it's just a really cool, like, it's a way for kids to come to camp and just be kids for a week. So that, like, some of them have such adult responsibilities when they're not at camp, but like, we just want to give them the freedom to be kids for a week, like just to enjoy nature, to enjoy God, to enjoy time, like away from all the stress of their own lives. So like, I think it's great that it's an isolated place, because then like they're not distracted by that and the other thing, like all the road noise or traffic or like places they could go. No, they're like, we're in it. Like we're there to make sure that that they have a really great experience and that they can get out of their own home lives for a little while and just be kids, because kids need to be kids. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a definitely a place where you can get some solitude.
For sure.
The only time I've ever seen black bears is actually on my drive to and from that camp.
Yeah.
So,
it's amazing.
is there anything else you want to share while you have a hot mic and the opportunity?
Yeah. Okay. So one more thing. I promise I won't take up too much more of your guys' time. It's been long enough. I would just encourage like intentionality with community. I know that during this time of COVID and during like all the lockdowns and the shutdowns and things and people being isolated from each other, I get that it's easy to kind of like not want to engage with other people. And I understand that, but I think it's really important that we reach out as a community and check on one another. I think it's really important that we reach out and make sure that everyone is okay and that we're keeping people in the loop, like we're communicating with them, because like, I would like to say I'm pretty intentional with my friendships. I have been pretty consistent, I think, for the last like year and a half, maybe like year or whatever. I'm going to say I wasn't a great friend back in the day, but like, I'm trying to be better now. I'm trying to be a better friend and be more intentional with people. I think even now with everything going on, it is so vitally important for us to be checking on each other and making sure that people are okay and to pray for each other. I mean, even if it's just as simple as a text, I mean, it's not the same, but at least it's like connection, and people need connection right now. They need that to know that someone else sees them. And and even like I was told once that sometimes when you cross somebody's path and you say hi to them, that could be the first time all day that anybody addressed them. And sometimes they just need to know that somebody knows their name and just says it, because like sometimes you just need to know that somebody knows you. And so that connection with other people is so vitally important, and God created us for community. So like getting our communities to like really dig in and like be intentional about checking in on each other and making sure that everybody's like good. And if they're not good, to be that listening ear or to pray for them. Like that is so important right now. So that would be the only other thing I think that I really wanted to hit home, because it was so important for me to have that. So yeah.
Awesome. You did great tonight, Lori.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For sharing your story and sharing, just being vulnerable and honest and open with us. It's such an important thing. And so if anyone else wants to share their testimony somewhere down the road, they are welcome to do that. But for now, just thank you to Lori for sharing her testimony and her story. I'm trying not to say Lori and story too much.
It's okay. You do you.
Yeah.